The news day continues here on One News Now Business. I'm Diego Castro. Here are the biggest stories on the economic and corporate fronts. Analysts say headline inflation likely slowed further for a fifth straight month in June. A Business World poll of 17 analysts yielded a median estimate of 5.5% forecast for June inflation. That's within the 5.3 to 6.1% forecast given by the Bangko Sentral. If realized, the median estimate will be slower than the 6.1% print in May. Analysts say this is due to stabilization of prices of key food items such as meat, fish, and fruits. A higher base last year is also seen to have pulled down the annual figure. President Marcos marks his first year in office with resilient growth and improving business sentiment. Now in his second year, the chief executive is facing prospects of softening demand amid elevated inflation. Manolo Serapio Jr. reports on Bloomberg TV.
Hey, I think overall the economists and analysts are saying that he's done a very decent job and in his first year because there were expectations or at least fears of a doomsday scenario, but none of that panned out. He was able to, despite one of the most aggressive tightening campaigns in the region, actually the Philippines posted one of the best economic growth in most of Asia at 6.4%, and expectations are growth this year will be above 6%. Probably slowing down a bit next year, but still at about 6%, that would be one of the best in Asia. So I think it's a fairly decent job that he's done, according to economists and analysts.
What about challenges for the second year in office?
I think taming inflation would be on top of them. I think right now at just above 6%, it's still elevated and it's still outside the 2 to 4% target range of the central bank. Although the central bank is seeing that the inflation would come back to its target range by September, October this year. And there's also the pressing issue of food security because I think early this year we've seen the prices of onion, for example, becoming the most expensive in the world. Philippine onion becoming the most expensive in the world, and that's not a supply issue, but more of traders hoarding the commodity because we had a bumper crop last year, and now we're seeing rice prices rise again, and it's a staple grain, and we should remember that Marcos actually promised during his campaign that he would have the prices of rice, and we haven't seen that happen yet. But I think Marcos himself has said that it's still a work in progress. Whatever he's doing, it's still delivering on his campaign promises. It's still a work in progress, and he needs to undo 30 or 40 years of what's been done to the agriculture sector, which remains a key sector of the economy.
To give us his forecast on the country's economy as we enter the second year of the Marcos administration, we have with us live via Zoom veteran market analyst Jonathan Ravelas. Good morning, sir. Thank you very much for joining us on One News Now.
Good morning, Diego. Thank you for having me.
Yes, sir. Let's get right to it. How would you assess President Bongbong Marcos's performance in his first year in office? Meron po ba tayong mga notable trends na nag-emerge during this time, and ano po yung mga challenges?
Okay, so let me try to break it down into the good, the bad, the ugly. So the good, I think he really chose a good economic team. Second, we've seen a rebalancing of the foreign policy from an ultra China to something that is more of-centric. And eventually, of course, we've seen improving business sentiment arising from the fight against inflation. So coming from a very high inflation, consumer and business sentiment has greatly improved. However, if we look at the bad, I guess there's been a lot of concentration on the process of the Maharlika Fund. No?
Yes.
Rather than concentrating on the implementing rules and guidelines of the previous administration past loss, no? And of course, the ugly is really the state of the agricultural sector. I know it's a real work in progress, but it's quite slow, no? Especially it is under the president's portfolio.
And sir, what do you think about the key economic challenges that this administration will face entering its second year?
Oh, well, basically, I guess we need to look at now we are seeing the impact of the inflation, no? So that is already trickling down to or waning consumption, no? They're being affected. Number two is that your rising debt, no? And eventually your fiscal deficit. Looking at 2024 budget, we're looking at close to 2.4 trillion in additional budget deficit, no? So that will be added to our over 13 trillion debt. So this is a challenge. So to be able to sustain a growth of around over 6%,
Yes.
and 6% is my 2023 forecast, and looking at around 5.7 as we move to 2024. We need to be able to fund the 9 trillion infrastructure program of the government. So two things, and we've seen this in the past headlines. They're slowly working on adjusting or adding additional taxes. This is eventually a challenge for the economy, because additional taxes are already contractionary to already contracting economy, no?
And sir, we all know, I think it was mentioned in the report earlier, no, na the agriculture sector is a very important driver in the economy. What are your thoughts on the president staying on as the agriculture secretary? Do you think he is effective in this role, or do you think it's time na magkaroon tayo ng agri-secretary para ma-divide naman ang load ng Pangulo?
Okay, I think there's two streams of thought. Having the president can, maximize or make use of his office. The problem is that the problem is really big, no? And it needs a strategy that has to be made on top, which is the president, and eventually something that is at the bottom, which is eventually the grassroots, no? I call this, ito yung bibingka strategy. There should be fire on top and fire at the bottom. So from the president perspective, in his State of the Nation address last year, he ironed out what's needed to lay down the recovery of the agriculture sector. However, sad to say that from a grassroots level, hindi pa natin nakikita yung actual environment that's needed, no? Especially now that we've seen the devolution of the local governments, no? So this makes it harder to ensure that the plans of the national government is well echoed in the plans of the local government. So kailangan talaga cohesive yung strategy and setting the tone that what we all want to achieve, no? That means that there is food on the table. We want to make sure that farm to table strategies are much shorter, and being able to have a supply chain that will be able to deliver to other parts of the country.
And of course, a lot of people are asking, sir, what is your inflation forecast for this month? And what are the factors contributing to this projection?
Oh, well, eventually, looking at 5.5%. Over the past months, I've been very off, in the sense that I feel that despite that we're seeing a downtrend in inflation, we're still seeing a lot of pressures that's keeping prices above. It's just that probably the high base effect has taken effect compared to last year. But the reality is, that this upcoming talks and eventually reports of an upcoming El Nino could eventually keep inflation slightly elevated. Probably just for June, we're seeing 5.5, but towards the second half of the year, hopefully El Nino will be much milder compared to what is expected, because this could actually keep inflation on the high side, especially the fact that even in the global perspective, we're seeing the US Federal Reserve highlighting that there's a real need to raise rates to fight this sticky inflation. And we have these issues here at home. One of them is, as I said, El Nino. We have reports about the ASF, which continues to hunt our provinces. So these challenges are really, we need to really work on the agri sector to be able to ensure that we try to bring down inflation permanently.
And with all the things that was mentioned a while ago, sir, do you think the BSP will keep the rates steady?
Maybe for now, but I think before end of the year, we could probably see as little as 6.5%, maybe another quarter hike, or as much as 7%, depending on how the US will probably react on their side, no? But for me, my year-end forecast for our policy rate is at 6.5%.
Okay, thank you very much. That was a veteran market analyst, Jonathan Ravelas. Thank you, sir, for joining us on One News Now Business.
You're welcome. Good morning.
We'll be back with more stories after the break. Keep it here on One News. You're still watching One News Now. I'm Diego Castro. The Aboitiz Group expands to the airline business as it becomes a majority owner of low-cost carrier Air Asia Philippines. That's according to a report by the Philippine Star. Multiple sources told the Star that the Aboitiz Group controls AACom Travel Philippines Incorporated, which bought a 60% stake in Air Asia in June. An industry source said the Aboitiz Group made the buyout in support of its proposal to rehabilitate and upgrade the airports in Albay and Bohol. According to another source, the Aboitiz Group vowed to infuse the capital needed by the airline to keep up with competitors. Still on transportation, commuters are reminded that there will be no more trips for the PNR from Alabang to Calamba and vice versa, at least for now. The route was temporarily halted to make way for the construction of the North-South Commuter Railway project that will connect Manila to Pampanga and Laguna. Over 400 passengers daily will be affected by the suspension of this route. The PNR management promises that once the repairs are completed, commuter travel will be faster. In the meantime, the LTFRB will open alternative public transport vehicle routes for affected PNR passengers. Before year-end, the PNR will also close the Governor Pascual route from Tutuban to Alabang and vice versa, also in connection with the North-South Commuter Railway project.
Kami po ay humihingi ng konting pag-unawa at konting pasensya po sa ating mga kababayan na apektado po ng stop operations. Itong panandaliang sakripisyo po natin ay kinakailangan po nating maisagawa upang nasa gayoy may pabilis natin ang pagdating ho ng pangmatagalang ginhawa.
And another heads up to motorists. Prices of petroleum products are expected to go down this week. Unioil projects diesel and gasoline products to become cheaper by up to 80 centavos per liter. An industry source attributes this to pessimism over outlook of the interest rates and other factors. Oil companies will announce final price adjustments later today, which will take effect on Tuesday. And those are the top business stories of the hour. I'm Diego Castro. Join us again at 2 p.m. We are One News, all sides, all the time.